Nothing, no broadcasting. It won't be on the TV. So thanks for coming. I'm going to canter through this at a fair speed, so we can get through to the end without taking up too much of your time. What are we talking about here today in terms of a sort of founder's playbook for buying research? Well, in my view, there's kind of three different ways you might approach research. You can do it yourself. You can go out and buy research reports that exist already. So there are plenty of companies out there that do analysis, do research, publish those reports, which you can kind of buy off the shelf. And the third way to kind of access research, which is what we're going to be talking about today, is when you want to outsource it to a supplier, which could be, you know, a consultant, a freelancer, or an agency. So this applies to that kind of route to buying research. Why am I doing this? Well, in my experience, in the conversations that I've had with founders and those people who are kind of in small startup teams, I've noticed that there are a few problems associated with that kind of path to buying research. Principally, I think most people haven't ever bought research before, or maybe they haven't bought research for a long time, so it's very unfamiliar. You know, it's not something you do every day. It's a purchase that is quite often I've put not very pleasant. I think maybe there's a slight change of vocab needed there, but it's not easy. You know, in my view, I've been working in research for a long time. It still isn't very easy to buy research, and we'll come on to detail why that is. And I think because of that, it probably isn't a very pleasant experience either. It's not something that that fills people with joy, and it's a very unfamiliar thing. So the whole research process itself, you know, buying is one thing, but when you come to the research process, it's a very unfamiliar thing. It's laden with jargon. It's overcomplicated. It's a really quite simple thing, and it should be quite a simple thing, but it doesn't feel like it is from where I'm sitting, kind of looking outwards. So what's today about? The promise, what am I aiming to leave you with at the end of this half-hour session? Three things. Firstly, to give you the kind of tools and some advice around how you might find and select the right research supplier that meets your needs. You'll see how many there are in a moment, and what kind of problems that might bring up. I'm going to give you some tools and some advice on how to properly brief your supplier, and critically to kind of set objectives to help deliver a successful outcome. Asking some of the questions, giving you some idea of some of the questions you might want to ask to make sure that you're partnering with the right kind of consultant or with the right agency, in order that you're going to get the maximum return on your investment. It's not a sales call. I think I may have, if you saw a post on LinkedIn where I was promoting this webinar, but one of the kind of problems I find with some of these things is it's just a half-hour sales call. I'm not selling to you. I do offer research. I do supply research to founders and startups, but that's not the intention of today. So it's more about giving you value. So if you hear me selling, then feel free to kind of tell me off. Who am I? What's this guy all about? Why am I telling you this? My name's Gideon. I run a research business called Customer IQ. I've been in research for, I had to top that up recently, 23 years. I started in the year 2000 as a graduate trainee, moved across to different kind of client roles, worked in some bigger organizations like the BBC, ITV for a while. So I've kind of switched between supplier and customer client. So I have an idea of, you know, what it's like to sell to people, but also what it's like to buy from suppliers as well. So the reason I've stuck a LinkedIn logo on there is that I'm all over LinkedIn. So I'm trying to post daily, trying to engage with people on LinkedIn. So that's a place that you'll find me if you need to follow up. So how are you going to find a research supplier? Well, it's going to be difficult. That's the short answer. This is just a kind of screenshot of LinkedIn. If you go onto LinkedIn, if you search for companies in the market research sector based in the United Kingdom, you get 5,400 results, which is frighteningly high, and maybe kind of, when I saw that, kind of worried that I'm in such a competitive market. It's a very mature market. There are lots and lots of suppliers. I don't think there are 5,400 people you can buy from. Obviously, that includes a few businesses that have probably ceased trading or merged. There's a lot of supply chain in the industry, so some of these companies will be companies that are supplying research research sellers. But there's a lot. There are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of research suppliers. So it's a very difficult thing to do. What can you do? I think, generally speaking, what I found when I was speaking to people who buy research or have bought research, how do they find the kind of supplier that they want to work with? Well, a lot of it is probably down to luck. You can ask people, you can phone a friend, you can ask people in your network, you can ask for a recommendation, and you'll definitely get some good recommendations. I guess the problem there is that it might be a good recommendation from them, but it might not exactly be a supplier that fits your needs. So there's lots of specialism within the industry in terms of techniques, research techniques, sectors that companies work in, the types of audiences that they specialize in doing their research in. So what fits your friend's experience may not fit yours. Another way of doing that might be through search. So, Googling specific keywords, filters. I've been playing around with LinkedIn. I'm just going to jump out. I'll probably end up losing everybody by doing this, but I'm going to jump out of the slides, go into LinkedIn, because it's actually the number. I don't know if you can see that now. The number's now telling me it's 5,900. But I did a quick search earlier, and yes, there's a nice company here that comes up top. So these are companies in the United Kingdom in the market research sector. If I say I'm interested in, let's say I'm offering a product or a service for young people. If I put youth in there and sort of search for youth, I get a list of quite interesting companies. Now, let's scan down the list. Which ones? This one here, family, kids and youth, sounds pretty relevant. But this one's caught my eye because it's called the Pineapple Lounge and it sounds kind of funky. And I know it's a good agency. So this is a way of narrowing down your search. What's great about LinkedIn is that you can then, if you go down here and you look at similar pages, that's not. Hang on, if I go to similar pages, I think that's the right option. Then I'm going to get a lot of businesses and companies which are similar to the Pineapple Lounge. So I can go to check out Firefish. They're a good one too. Sherbet Research. All of these are great businesses. Hall and Partners, Sparkler, Basis. These might all fit my criteria, whatever my criteria might be. So that's a way of kind of filtering into the mass of suppliers out there. There are a couple of other ways of doing that. So the Market Research Society, which is the trade body that offers a tool which is called the Research Buyer's Guide, which again is basically a database that you can search, and you can filter that on specialisms, locations, types of sector that people work in. If you're looking for something more independent, like a consultant, a freelancer, there's a website called the Independent Consultants Group, which is really good, which houses a number of different kind of one-man bands who are doing research. And there's a good website called insightplatforms.com, which is much more about technology, so market research where it meets technology. So if you're looking for something a bit more tech-driven, a bit more innovative, then that might be a place to go. But it's tricky, right? You've got a lot of options out there. You're probably quite unfamiliar with many of those businesses. It could be that you want to kind of map them out a little bit, depending on what you're looking for. You're looking for something more traditional, more tech, more innovative. Are you looking for something more boutique or more large scale? So it could be an idea to kind of take the ones you found and map them out a little bit to kind of give you a bit clearer kind of impression of what's available and who you might kind of focus in on. But I think my advice would be kind of shortlist. So start looking, shortlist your choices down to 3, 4, 5, whatever you're comfortable with. If it was me, I'd probably have a very long shortlist. because I find it difficult to kind of just, you know, if I'm buying something, I want to see all the options. So maybe you have a longer short list. Think about some of the things that you might do to kind of whittle that down into a real short list. So things like sectors and specialisms. If you visit the website of some of these agencies and suppliers, you'll see that they might have case studies, which can be really, really useful as a way to kind of understand how they go about things, what the outcomes of their work is. You know, are there some case studies that kind of feel similar to what you need? Check out the team. I think team's really important. You know, making sure that there's a bit of chemistry. Do the people kind of on their team seem like they might be the kind of people that would work well with your team? And obviously that kind of fit with values and your brand. When you're looking around an agency's website, you know, what kind of language are they using? What kind of values are they displaying? You know, and how does that fit with what you're trying to achieve? So let's assume you've kind of done that step and you've got your list. The next stage in the process would be to brief the agency or agencies. This is a good visual, because I would always recommend, if you're going to brief agencies, to brief at least 3. And it's not wasting their time. You're a client, you know, you've got money to spend with them. It's your right, if you like, to shop around a little bit. I would always encourage you. I'm encouraging people that come to me for a proposal to go out and seek at least another couple of proposals. Why am I doing that? I think because everyone's a little bit different. You'll get a range of solutions back. You'll get a range of research techniques, some of which you might like more than others. You'll definitely get a range of prices. So it might be a case of not going with the most expensive or the cheapest, maybe the one in the middle. And you'll definitely get a kind of range of team as well. So it's important that you select the agency or the supplier that fits within your criteria. The kind of things you're going to want to do in terms of briefing, you know, explaining to them what the need for research is. It might be that you're developing a new product, a new idea, launching a new marketing campaign. You know, you might be suffering. The business might be suffering from poor performance, and you want to kind of investigate why. So there's always going to be some sort of key need for doing research, and that might be tied to a sense of timing. So, you know, why is it important that that's done now? What are the key milestones that are coming up? When does that research need to be delivered? What are the decisions that are going to be made on the back of that research, and when? You know, and how important is it that things fit into that kind of timeline? What's going to change as a result of this research? Again, you know, what kind of decisions need to be made? What are the fundamental things that this research needs to influence? There are other things, you know, what kind of proposal, that should say format, not formal. So what kind of format are you looking for in terms of a proposal? What's the process from your side for being commissioned? You know, let's be transparent with them, allow them to kind of know what you plan to do. You might want to give them a budget. There's 2 schools of thought here on whether you give an agency a budget to work to, because if you do give them quite a prescriptive budget, you'll probably find that all 3 come back with a fee that's about £5 less than your budget. But if you give them a range, then you've got something to work to, and then maybe they can give you a few different options. There is I've put together a document which is a kind of template for briefing research agencies, which kind of follows on. I don't know if you're aware of the Better Brief campaign. It's kind of something that got a bit of groundswell last year, and it was very much focused on helping clients of marketing and creative agencies to brief those agencies better. The idea being that, you know, a better brief, you know, equals a better outcome. So I've kind of ripped that idea off and kind of put it into a kind of research format, and that exists as a Google Doc that I'm happy to share. I'll provide the link to people afterwards. So you know, you can use that to kind of guide you, and maybe use that as a template if you want to get to the briefing stage with anyone. How are you going to assess those proposals that come back? There are, there's the kind of obvious stuff, I think, like how well do they understand your business, the problem that you're aiming to solve? How fitting, how apt is the method and the approach that they are suggesting? What's the price like? Does it feel really expensive? Does it feel a bit too cheap? Is it somewhere in the middle? That probably seems about right. Does their timing work with your timing? Who's on their team? What kind of experience do they have? And how well do they fit with your team? Then there are the kind of less obvious things. I think these are some of the questions I alluded to earlier that you might want to think about asking a supplier, and they're not the kind of questions that get asked very much, but they should be, in my opinion. If I was buying research, these are the kind of questions I'd like to think I would be asking. So how valuable is my business to your business? There's no point going to an agency that's very big and you're very small, because with the best of intentions, that you're not going to be their key client. Their key client is going to be some big blue chip multinational company, and so the attention that they place on you probably isn't going to be what you deserve. So think about the fit in terms of size of your business to the supplier. Questions like, how do you ensure you deliver value to my business are really interesting questions to ask, because the answers you'll get will be quite varied and will be quite telling, I think, in terms of how engaged that supplier is to work with you. Who's going to work on the project day to day? When I was buying research, the worst thing that happened, and it did happen, was you'd get an experienced director coming out and doing the pitch and getting involved at the front end of the proposal. And then as soon as you commission the project, you never see that person again, and the work's handed over to somebody more junior, which is, fine. That's how agencies work, but it doesn't. You weren't buying that person. You were, your intention was to kind of buy and get access to that senior director. What's the process from start to finish? I'm going to touch on process very lightly on the next couple of slides, but that could be a subject for another webinar. But go through step by step. It might be something you're really unfamiliar with and you just need a bit of hand holding, and they should be able to tell you, this is what is going to happen when, this is what we need you to do, this is kind of how we work, so you're very informed at the beginning of what's going to happen next and when. And I think the last question there, it's not the least important, it's maybe the most important. What happens once this project is completed? Most agencies will kind of deliver their presentation, their debrief, and you may not hear from them ever again until such time that they're touting for more business. But the research doesn't stop there. As a research buyer, as someone who used to sit in client teams, you then have to take that research and those findings and apply them to a business, and it's not always easy. And actually, there is definitely an opportunity for a good research supplier to stay involved, to offer a bit of advice, a bit of aftercare, a bit of follow-up. So that would be a really interesting question to ask, I think. We're getting towards the end. It's 23 minutes past 2. We've got a couple of minutes, and then we'll have 5 minutes for questions. So in terms of the process of carrying out a piece of research, a research project, as I said, it's kind of a topic for another day maybe. But what I would say, and this is broadly how things work, you should set some objectives. There'll be a period of setting things up. There'll be a period of data collection, whether that's quantitative, qualitative, both. Then there'll be a period of an analysis, and the agency will debrief you. And the reason I've highlighted that first stage of objective setting is because I think it's something that's sometimes a little bit overlooked. You commission the agency, you're quite excited, they're quite excited. You want to get started, you want to get going, you want to collect some data, you want to see some results. And actually, I don't always do this. I try to do this, but I would always encourage you to sort of stop and think a little bit harder at the beginning. Yes, you've briefed the agency. Yes, you've done that work, but let's work out a clear set of objectives. Think of it as a marketing campaign or any kind of campaign. It has to have some objectives and some key questions that need to be answered. And so that, if you get that right, if you get that agreed up front, it makes everything else so much more simple and more straightforward, because a good set of objectives, when you come to write a questionnaire or when you come to do an interview guide for some interviews, it just flows very naturally out of the objectives. It's a very, very straightforward process. When you come to the end of the project and you want to understand, did we get what we needed? You go back and you check it against the objectives. Did the debrief answer the objectives that we set at the start of the process? And if you spend a little bit of extra time setting those objectives, I truly believe that you're going to more likely have a more successful outcome. But this could be a subject for another day. So, quick summary: what have we been talking about? I think I feel like there's a lot more you can be doing in terms of planning your research purchase. Think about the activities that are happening in the business over the next 12 months, 24 months. Where might you want to do some research? Plan ahead. Think about it now. Allow enough time for that to happen. All too often, research is a bit of a last minute thought, and so people are coming to people like me as suppliers and saying, we need some research and we need it done next week. And it's just you're never going to get a good piece of research if you don't think about having a bit of planning. Get cracking on that shortlist. You may not be anywhere near kind of thinking about buying research at the moment, but you can start shortlisting. You can start shopping around. You can start having a look at some of those agencies that you may want to work with. Get on their mailing list. Just check them out, see what they're about. Whittle them down, get down to that short list, so that when you do find you need research, you're kind of ready to go. Definitely ask those less obvious, more difficult questions. Don't be afraid of asking lots of questions, lots of probing questions. If they want to work with you, they should be able to provide answers to those questions. And as we've just seen, definitely spend more time than you think you need to on setting those objectives, and closely follow that process. It's a bit of a learning curve as well. And it's a good learning curve. I think once you've done it once successfully, you're very much well armed to go back and buy some research again. So there we have it. End of the webinar. I realize there's not many of us on the call, but if you have any questions, please jump off mute and fire away.
I've got a quick question, I think, Gideon, if that's all right.
Yeah, fire away, Joe.
So I thought the content was really interesting. First off, one of my questions is specifically around kind of the questions when setting research objectives. What are some of the questions that you might be asking to kind of like interrogate the problem and understand a bit more about the problem during that process? Is there anything that you typically ask or encourage people to ask?
I think for me, the perfect kind of process for that would be to kind of get some views from around the client's business, because the day-to-day contact, the person that kind of commissions that agency will have should have a good view. But actually, if you speak to a salesperson, or if you speak to technology, a CTO or someone like that, they will have other things that they might want to bring to the table. So if you can give access to a range of different people across the business, and I think a good agency will help you with that process. You don't need to give them research objectives. You need to give them business objectives, brand objectives. What are you trying to achieve as an organization? Then they turn those into research objectives, which could be a set of questions or some hypotheses, or it's their job to kind of translate what you need into a piece of research. And again, that's a good way of kind of judging how good they are at what they do.
Interesting. Okay. Useful.
Thank you. Any other questions, Tammy or Garrett?
No, all is good coming.
Marvelous. Thanks for coming. I can give you 60 seconds back of your 30-minute slot. We finished a minute early, so thanks again. Yeah, thanks again for coming. Look out for some more. There'll be other webinars coming up. I'm trying to get into a rhythm of doing one at the end of each month. I think the next one will be around some insight tools that you can use that are free to use, and kind of make it a bit more of a live demo session where I can kind of show you how to use those. Garrett, thanks for your message. Your mic's blocked. No worries. Hopefully look out for next time. It will be the last Friday of February, but I'll be posting heavily about it on LinkedIn. So thank you, and have a great weekend.
Cheers, Gideon.